All right, at this hour, 2 items on the agenda. You see your screen is split. So on the right-hand side of your screen, we just witnessed history unfolding. You see that big beam, and along the side, the numbers 1271. That is One World Trade Center. This building, as of about 3 minutes ago, is now officially the tallest building in the state of New York. This is incredibly significant. This is ground zero, and this is really as you're flying into LaGuardia or Newark or JFK. You notice it right along the ground, right next to those beautiful reflective pools. And you know, of course, the significance of that date, and it's a huge triumph for folks I know in New York. We're going to take a news conference there. We're waiting to hear from the Port Authority and also the folks who built this massive building in a matter of minutes. On the left-hand side of your screen, you're not seeing anyone, but you will soon see the President of the United States standing alongside Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihiko Noda, and this is the first meeting there between the two leaders. This is the East Room of the White House. I was told they had to move it from the Rose Garden because of some inclement weather there in Washington. Nevertheless, let's check in with our White House correspondent Brianna Keeler, who I know is inside that room alongside many of her colleagues. And Brianna, just set the scene for me and tell me what we should expect from this historic meeting.
Well, we're expecting certainly an emphasis as President Obama has tried to reset his foreign policy, really looking east instead of to the Middle East, Brooke, that he will be emphasizing his alliance with Japan is very important in that respect. There's a number of topics certainly that will have come up in the discussions today between President Obama and Prime Minister Noda. One of them, no doubt, and Brooke, that's a 2-minute warning, so we have a couple minutes here to talk, but one of those is certainly going to be North Korea. Japan, for instance, condemned that failed rocket launch earlier this month, and that certainly is something the U.S. is looking towards Japan for their role in dealing with North Korea. Myanmar, which is in general making a move towards more democratic principles, the U.S. is looking to Japan there, and also looking for some help, certainly with Iran. Japan has come through in a way for the U.S. by limiting its oil consumption of Iranian oil, that is. And of course, I think you'll be hearing from Prime Minister Noda, or President Obama will be, as Japan looks to join a very large trade partnership, the Trans-Pacific trade partnership that the U.S. is involved in. One of the things that will have sort of smoothed over relations leading up to this meeting, Brooke, you know, there's always this very sticky issue of U.S. Marines in Okinawa, a sticky issue between the U.S. and Japan. And just last week, there was an agreement between the two nations that 9,000 of the 19,000 U.S. Marines would be moving, staying in the region, Australia, Guam, Hawaii, but moving away from the Japanese island of Okinawa.
Right, sure, as priorities are shifting after more than a decade of war in both Iraq and Afghanistan. As we wait here, as we wait to see the President and the Prime Minister, in fact, do we see them? There we go, they're early. Here we go, let's take it live.
Please be seated. Good afternoon, everybody. It is a great pleasure to welcome Prime Minister Noda of Japan, one of America's closest allies in the Asia-Pacific region, but also around the world. And of course, one of the reasons that we enjoy such a strong alliance between our nations is because it's rooted in the deep friendship between our peoples. I felt it in my own life during my visits to Japan, including as a young boy, and we've seen that friendship on display very profoundly over the past year. Last month, we marked the first anniversary of the great East Japan earthquake and tsunami and nuclear crisis that followed. All across Japan, people stopped and stood in silence at 2:46 p.m., the moment that the earth shook. Mr. Prime Minister, on behalf of the American people, I want to say to you and the people of Japan, we continue to stand with you as well. We stand with Japan in honoring the lost and the missing. 19,000 men, women, and children who will never be forgotten. We stand with you as you rebuild what you, Mr. Prime Minister, have called the rebirth of Japan. And we stand with Japan in the Asia-Pacific and beyond, because even as it has focused on the hard work at home, Japan has never stopped leading in the world. It is a great tribute to the Japanese people and to leaders like Prime Minister Noda. I'm told that over the past year, many Japanese have found strength in what they call kizuna, the bonds of solidarity between friends and neighbors, bonds which cannot be broken. Mr. Prime Minister, the same could be said of the bonds between the United States and Japan. And today, we welcome you in that spirit. As President, I've worked to strengthen the ties between our two nations since my first days in office. And when Prime Minister Noda and I first met last September, we agreed to modernize our alliance to meet the needs of the 21st century. And Mr. Prime Minister, I want to thank you for the personal commitment that you've brought to this effort. You've called the alliance with the United States Japan's greatest asset. And in our work together, we've seen your trademark determination and humility. In fact, during our discussions today, the Prime Minister compared his leadership style to that of a point guard in basketball. He may not be the flashiest player, but he stays focused and gets the job done. He's brought that same sense of teamwork to our partnership, and it's helped make this visit a milestone in the history of our alliance. I'm proud to announce that we have agreed to a new joint vision to guide our alliance and help shape the Asia-Pacific for decades to come. This is part of the broader effort I discussed in Australia last year, in which the United States is once again leading in the Asia-Pacific. First, we recognize that the U.S.-Japan alliance will remain the foundation of the security and prosperity of our two nations, but also a cornerstone of regional peace and security. As such, we reviewed the agreement that our governments reached last week to realign American forces in Japan. This reflects our effort to modernize America's defense posture in the Asia-Pacific with forces that are more broadly distributed, more flexible, and more sustainable. At the same time, it will reduce the impact on local communities like Okinawa. Second, our joint vision commits us to deepening our trade and investment. We're already among each other's top trading partners, and our exports to Japan and Japanese companies here in the U.S. support more than 1 million American jobs. But there's more we can do, especially as we work to double U.S. exports. So I appreciate the Prime Minister updating me on his reform efforts in Japan, including liberalizing trade and playing a leading role in Asia-Pacific's economy. We instructed our teams to continue our consultation regarding Japan's interest in joining the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which would benefit both our economies and the region. And we agreed to deepen our cooperation on nuclear safety, clean energy, and cybersecurity to enhance our economic competitiveness. Third, our joint vision lays out the future we seek in the Asia-Pacific, a region where international rules and norms are upheld, where nations contribute to regional security, where commerce and freedom of navigation is not impeded, and where disputes are resolved peacefully. As such, we continue our close consultations on the provocative actions of North Korea, which are a sign of weakness and not strength, and only serve to deepen Pyongyang's isolation. And we discuss the changes underway in Burma and how our two nations can both reward progress there while encouraging more reforms that improve the lives of the Burmese people. Fourth, our joint vision reaffirms our role as global partners, bound by shared values and committed to international peace, security, and human rights. For example, our nations are the largest donors in Afghanistan. As we plan for the NATO summit in Chicago and the next phase of the transition in Afghanistan, Japan is planning for a donor conference to sustain development there. I also want to take this opportunity to commend the Prime Minister and Japan for showing such strong leadership with regard to Iran's nuclear program. The regime in Tehran is now feeling the economic screws tighten, and one of the reasons is that countries like Japan made the decision to reduce oil imports from Iran. And this is just one more example of how, despite challenging times at home, Japan has continued to serve as a model and a true global leader. Finally, our joint vision commits us to deepening the ties between our peoples. This includes new collaborations between our scientists, researchers, and entrepreneurs to foster innovation, and it includes new exchanges that will bring thousands of our young people together, including high school students, to help Japanese communities rebuild after last year's disasters. So, again, Mr. Prime Minister, thank you for helping to revitalize our extraordinary alliance so that we enjoy even greater security and prosperity for both our countries. And I once again want to salute the people of Japan for the strength and the resilience and the courage that they've shown during this past year. More than ever, the American people are proud to call you a friend and honored to call you an ally. And before I turn it over to the Prime Minister, I just want to warn the American press that the Prime Minister once considered himself a journalist, and instead he became a judo expert. He is a black belt, so if you get out of line, I've got some protection here. Mr. Prime Minister.
Well, following President Obama power forward, point guard Noda will take out the microphone. Now, this is the first visit to the United States by a Japanese Prime Minister in the bilateral context since the change of government took place in Japan. I wish to thank President Obama for the warm welcome and hospitality, as I know how busy he is with official duties. I had a very good exchange of views with the President today on bilateral relations between Japan and the United States, the situation in the Asia-Pacific region, and various global challenges, among others. We were able to confirm from broader perspectives the present-day significance of the Japan-U.S. alliance and where the Japan-U.S. relations should be headed in the longer term. The President just now spoke about his support, and I would like to take this opportunity to say thank you for all the unsparing support given by the government and people of the United States, starting with Operation Tomodachi conducted by U.S. forces at the time of the Great East Japan earthquake of last year. Yesterday, I met with the bereaved families of Taylor Anderson, who unfortunately passed away, but who took care of children until the very last moment following the Great East Japan earthquake. I also met with representatives of the Fairfax County Search and Rescue Team, who immediately following the earthquake deployed in the disaster-affected region to help the people. So I was able to meet myself with these true friends of Japan. Now, I've always held the conviction that our bilateral alliance is the linchpin of Japan's diplomacy. Having had conversation with my U.S. friends yesterday, I only renewed my conviction that Japan-U.S. alliance must be unshakable, and in fact is unshakable. As one holding such conviction, I'm particularly gratified that we're able to announce today the Japan-U.S. shared vision.
それぞれの持つ能力や資源を最大限活用し、日米両国が。
All right, you are listening to the Prime Minister of Japan. They're speaking alongside President Obama. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to take it right back to the White House after this.